A warm welcome and greetings to all the students for ADC3704. So I would like to welcome you to this study unit 2.1, which is the synchronous and asynchronous communication. So I'll be giving out this presentation today. My name is Mr. S Mampa. So today we will get an overview of unit 2.1. So for this module, teaching and learning with ICT in resource-rich setting. So firstly, before we could even go any further, let's talk about the most important definitions for this unit. I will start with the first one, which is very important, communication. So the communication is the process of transmitting or sending a message. This can involve several iterations before mutual understanding is achieved. So before we could focus on synchronous and asynchronous communication, firstly, we just need to understand how information is being shared between two components or even more. So I will start with the first one, which is the synchronous communication. So this communication that happens in real time. So meaning the two users, they can interact with each other in real time, irrespective of like being present at the same time, or either over the telecommunications or whichever method of communication that you can use. So we need two or more parties that are exchanging information in the same moment with one another. So this could be in a form of a conversation. When you say hi to your friend and your friend respond by saying hello back at the same time, that is a form of a synchronous communication. So we also have the asynchronous communication. This is a type of communication that includes a lag between when the party imparting the information sends the message and when the party receiving the message interprets it. So the form of a clear example could be sending an email. So that type of communication is not happening in real time. So you have to send a message. The receiver will have to read the email and can even respond within a period of like several hours or 2 days, or it can even take weeks or so. Another example, we can have a situation whereby we can use things like a blog, whereby one can post a message and the readers will read and respond to that particular blog on a later stage. So understanding these two different types of communication is very important in this course, because then you will know the downfalls and the advantages of each and when to use it and why should you use it. So it's very important to understand the two set of communications. So I will further explain more about communication. So the reason to put emphasis on communication is because we need to understand communication as a whole before we could start to understand synchronous and asynchronous communication. So communication is a two-way process where both sender and receiver take turns to send and receive a message. So let's take it that a sender sends a message and that message will be received by the receiver, and the receiver as well will read or interact with the message, and in a form of responding to the sender's message, the receiver becomes a sender and responds, and the message go back to the sender, whereby the sender becomes a receiver. So this form of communication is more of like a cycle. So the sender initially becomes the sender, but when they receive the message, they become the receiver. So that's what we call communication right there. So it's a loop of interaction of information. So we have to ask ourselves a question. when we send that type of particular message, are we really using synchronous type of communication, or are we using asynchronous type of communication? So we need to understand and differentiate the two. So throughout the process of sending a message, I will use an example like I mentioned previously. Let's say we're on a video conference, like a WhatsApp video call or a Skype or any form of video call conference. So when you're busy transmitting images and audios and any visuals through the video call, so that type of particular information will be the synchronous communication, because we mentioned earlier that it happens in real time. And also, when you have a communication whereby you can send an email and the receiver and respond to you within a period of 2 days or few hours, that type of communication will refer to it as an asynchronous communication, because there's a lack of time in between. It's not happening in real time. Okay. So students, so for today, we're just going to focus a little bit more on synchronous communication, and the next session, I'll focus more on asynchronous communication. So we need to understand that during the synchronous communication, multiple parties participate at the same time and wait for responses from each other. So the part of speaking about real time. So we have both parties from one end to the other end actively engage in one session, right? So meaning that they are all in the same communication line. So I'll use one example here, which is the let's talk about a virtual classroom. So with the virtual classroom, we can think of other things like learning management system. We can have like right here at UNISA right now, we're using something called Model, which is a learning management system. So we have the features inside the learning management system that allows you to do things like a real-time text chat, so that having students live online, we can all communicate at the same time, meaning that the lecturer can text a message in a group chat and the student can respond. So this type of communication, it happens synchronously. So we also have the interactive online whiteboard. So this is a whiteboard whereby we all can communicate without seeing each other or without even having any form of an audio and all that. So it's more of like a visual whiteboard whereby we just write things and then we communicate by just having our interactions on the whiteboard. So we have the video conferencing ability. Also, this one, you can also have it in the learning management system or other apps like Skype. You have things like Microsoft Teams. We have Zoom. There are so many. So I'm just mentioning the ones that we are used to, the ones that are mostly popular. So there are so many video conferencing applications. So the most popular ones that we use, which is WhatsApp, of course, amongst each individuals, they use WhatsApp for video calls and all that. So that is also another form of synchronous communication. So I would like to add on the WhatsApp one. So basically, people, we tend to use such applications for leisure or personal interest and all that. So we need to understand that academically, they also serve a more of like a very important factor in terms of give with their abilities of communication in a lesser cheaper manner. So they offer greater advantages as well, such apps as WhatsApp and Facebook and all that. So we cannot only use them for leisure and personal interest and all those things. So we can also turn them into to use them in your classrooms. You can also use them to communicate with parents and all those things in the parents' meeting if they're not there in an actual space. So they can be used for so many things. You just need to follow the right protocols on how to apply them, and then make sure that the environment where they are used, they are safe for everybody else. So we also have things like teacher tools and controls. So also this part of these teacher tools and controls, we'll talk of things like those features that you get in a learning management system that helps to be part of the synchronous communications, like noticing the students putting up a hand in a video conferencing meeting, and also highlighting students as well. So those are some of the examples that we can think of. And also have things like the library of learning materials. So all right, I want us to go through this table together, and I'll discuss the communication tools. Some of them we already discussed, and also their usability and limitations. All right. So remember, these ones, they all fall under synchronous communication tools. So I will start with the communication tool, which is the video conferencing. So it has the real-time interaction, seeing the person that you are communicating with and give important visual clues, right? So basically this one, it will happen more in those group discussions, right? Whereby you have to interact with your peers in a group discussion, or you have to interact with your lecturer and you have questions that you need to ask or certain topics that you need to discuss, right? It happens in real time. So the limitations to this could be the quality is dependent on bandwidth. So there may be short time lag between the speaking and receiving a response that can be disrupt the natural flow of a conversation. So the quality of the bandwidth mostly. Remember the network that we are using. So we all have different types of connections. One person can be used a high quality fiber connection, and one person might be using a 4G connection whereby the network is not even stable. So there might be a quality time, the image quality, the sound quality, and all that. So we must think of such limitations, especially when you to implement this type of communication. So you need to be very careful when to use such type of or recommend. So let's say you are in a school where it doesn't, how do I put it? The socio-economic activities around the area where the school is not proper. So it means that like you cannot uh, recommend things like video conferencing, knowing very well that the students or the learners of that schools will not be able to afford a better device or have a good standard of a data connection. So these are the limitations that you need to think of. So know when to use it and know when not to use it. All right. We have also web conferencing. So the usability, we have a real-time interaction, permits sharing of presentation, documents, and application demonstration. So that's the best thing about it. So it's an advantage. So sharing of presentation, documents, and application demonstration. So the limitation, I want to talk more about the limitations because that's the most important part of it. So the quality is dependent on the bandwidth as well, right? So anything basically online shared, the bandwidth mostly is important, especially depending on what are you using that type of communication tool for. Like you need to check whether if you're transmitting text or you're transmitting visuals, moving visuals, or you're transmitting audio. So the higher the size of the file that you're transmitting, that means the more stronger the bandwidth should be. So there may be short time lag between speaking and receiving a response that can disrupt the natural flow of a conversation. So also the limitation is not that different from the limitation from video conferencing, because you're also sharing visuals. So I'll go to the third one, which is the audio conferencing. So the real-time interaction, we have the collaborative discussion that involves certain number of people. So remember this one, examples here, we have things like phone calls, where you have to use your personal phone to call the other individual, whereby using things like airtime to make that phone call. It could be a landline, whichever form of method you're using. So if you're using things like Skype calling, also to rely on things like data connection, or WhatsApp calls, you rely on things like data connection, such type. So we have limitations. So the quality is dependent on also on the bandwidth. So remember, it's all about the internet connection here. So there may be the short time lag between speaking and receiving a response that can disrupt the natural flow of a conversation, right? Or maybe a person speaks and then you can hear them 5 seconds later. And then when you speak, also they hear you 5 seconds later, things like that. Or sometimes you don't hear the whole sentence, you just hear there's a cut and all those, the video, I mean, the sound horrible and all that. So it does not incorporate visual learning, because here you're just only transmitting audio, right? So you won't see pictures and all that. So there's no way you can hear a picture. You can only see a picture. So the audio conferencing has to do with what you hear, not what you see or touch. All right. We also have the live chat. So this one is a real-time interaction. Text and graphics capabilities are available for information sharing, flow complexities, provides documentation of student interaction. So here we will talk about things like the blog, the group discussions, or sending emails, any form of communication whereby text could be shared and also attachments could be attached. That will be referred to as a live chat. So we will use things like Microsoft Teams, where you're going to have you can have things like a call where you can meet your groups, and then while that is being done, instead of using audio or your microphones to communicate with your peers, you can also revert to the text at the chat box, whereby you can only text and communicate about something. So it's another method that you can use. Or you can have a WhatsApp group whereby you can have all your students or your learners in that group, and then you can share with them the documents about certain scopes or topics. And then their communication or their responses could be used in the form of text as well. They can respond back to you. So the limitation to these is that mostly text-based, and such slows down communication rate, may lead to misinterpretation of expressions. That is very true. That is very true. Remember, you should always remember that people interpret and read text differently. What student A and what student B and what student C reads from the same sentence will be very different. Their cognitive level, I'm sure we human beings, we don't have the same cognitive level. So interpreting information would be different from all the three students. So this mostly the text-based and such will slow down communication rate, and it's also will also lead to misinterpretation or expressions. So we should also be precise when we come to the live chats. Always trying to make sure that what you write or what you communicate with your student is clear and precise. Keep it short and keep it simple. All right. We also have this one, which is the whiteboarding. So also is a real-time interaction, demonstration, and co-development of ideas, right? So we have the limitation, which is the bandwidth based on and time effective with audio conferencing. So the whiteboarding, I will think of let's say this other application software is a free open source application software of which some features may be paid for. I want you guys to go look for an app called Paul Everywhere, right? So it has a little bit of a whiteboarding interaction in it. So just go and look for that app, and then so that you can get an idea of how this whiteboard works like. So we also have things like Google a Classroom as well. It's a free working learning management system. So you can also go look for that. Also has integrated whiteboard application software in it. So when you use the video conferencing app, which is called Google Meet, it is also located inside the Google Classroom. So you have the ability to introduce the whiteboard application using Google Meet to students who are active inside that meeting. So they are able to share their ideas or write anything on that whiteboard, or else you can also write something on that whiteboard as well. So as they mention here, the bandwidth as well is very important because now it has to do with data connection. We all need to have at least a strong data connection from our sides to make sure that this connection is smooth. So it as long as we know that we're focusing more on ICT things, we all understand or the most important thing here is the internet connection between both parties. So when we have a stable connection, then we all know that communication will run smoothly. The most important part of it is the internet connection. Okay, we also have application sharing. So we have a real-time interaction, demonstration, and code development of documents. So bandwidth-based and time-effective with audio conferencing. So, so application sharing as well. Remember, guys, all these features, they look more similar. We can also, before I could also finish speaking about application sharing, let me go back here. We talk about video conferencing, web conferencing, audio conferencing, live chat, whiteboarding, and also have application sharing. If you look all about all these communication tools, we have programs that group all these features into one application, right? So all these features, they will be found into one application or one program. Like I gave you a good example about the model learning system that UNISA is currently using. So you have all these features. You'll get video conferencing inside the platform. You will have things like web conferencing. You will have things like audio conferencing. You have things like live chat. You have things like whiteboarding, and you also have application sharing. So where we can share a lot of things inside a certain learning management system, like sharing documents in real time, presenting slideshows, and also speaking while presenting the very particular slideshow, and also texting while presenting a very particular slideshow. So here we have the limitation here about application sharing, which is the bandwidth base and time effective with audio conferencing. So students, what I will leave with you, I'm going to stop here with the synchronous communication. I will continue with the asynchronous communication, and then we will do the comparison of the two towards the end on the next session. But for now, I want you to go and then read more on asynchronous communication, understand what it entails, and also read more on asynchronous communication, understand what it entails, so that you will be able to choose or use which certain tool for a certain specific time, looking at certain limitations. So the next lesson will be on asynchronous communication. And then towards the end, we'll compare the two and then see how one can be used. And that's it. I would like to thank you.